We know the types of players we want and we know the budgets we have. You'll have to wait and see. And I'm not going to give you anyone any tactical advantage. Every side's going to be watching these. Good progress last year. In particular, the bowling side. We were really comfortable with how that was moving. We definitely found some areas where we needed to strengthen. It was probably also the first chance for Simon and myself to see players firsthand as well. And in the previous year, often you rely on other people's judgment. And I guess this year was a good chance for us to make our own assessment of players in different situations, and also make calls over whether we felt they fitted the way we wanted to play as a team. So, you factor all of those things in. You also factor a small auction in terms of trying to open up some cash to be able to buy some potential targets, and that gives you flexibility. It doesn't mean that some of those players we might not want back at a different price point. So all of those things you throw into the melting pot and you make those calls.
In the season before that, we had performed pretty poorly as far as the cricketing side was concerned. And we had performed well, actually not just last year, but over the last several years commercially. As a business, RCB has been doing really well. So as far as last season is concerned, on a commercial side, I'd like to say that given COVID and some of the challenges that happened with sponsorship, I'm actually very pleased by the overall shape of the P&L, right? In terms of the revenues from sponsorship and obviously revenues that we get from the central rights. So overall, despite not having ticket sales, right, because we didn't have a home stadium, despite higher costs because of travel into the Middle East and hotels which were more expensive, I'm very pleased with where the P&L has ended. But on the cricketing side, I'd like to say I would have liked to have done better. But I think yet we made progress from where we were in the year before that. Compared to 2019, we made progress. And I was really pleased actually. And obviously the expectations were even higher after the first 10 games, where we won 7 out of the first 10 games. And obviously we lost momentum. And momentum is an amazing thing. Positive momentum is positive. And once negative momentum starts, it's really hard to stop that either. And that's what happened in the first half of the tournament. First 10 games, we really had positive momentum. And then things kind of slowed down and we struggled to turn it around at that time. But overall, I would say pleased, not delighted.
The season, as we all know, started really well. I think so out of 10 games, we won 7, and it was a brilliant start. But then we had a couple of hiccups in between. Example, Chris Morris, who was one of our main stay, got injured, and that shifted the balance of the team. And post the season, we sat in terms of, along with the support staff, Director Cricket Operation, Mike, Kato, and Virat, and discussed at length in terms of what are the changes that we need to do. And you can see the changes in the retention strategy what we had. Very clearly, there were a couple of debates which we had in terms of what worked and what didn't work, and that clearly reflected in our retention and release approach. And currently, we know clearly what is our gaps and what needs to be filled. And we are completely positive going into this auction, saying that we will have a brilliant side going in for IPL, the coming IPL season.
See, we obviously had some gaps, particularly as far as some middle order batsmen were concerned, and the big hitters who can kind of take you home. I also think we struggled a bit with injuries of people like Chris Morris, who were critical after they started coming in to the game. I mean, he really managed to cut through the opposition a few times while scoring a few runs, and he wasn't there for some of the most critical games we had. But with hindsight, I also feel the learnings are that maybe we could have played a different 11 from the squad that we had, which might have got us different results. Now, cricket is an amazing game. Everyone has 100% clarity with hindsight, right? I think it's the foresight that's the biggest challenge. But with hindsight, I'd like to say there are some lessons learned about who we could have played. in the playing 11, and of course the negative because of the injury of people like Chris Morris.
You obviously consider that when you look to release players, and obviously every side will have their targets, and many sides will have the same targets. So you're right, there will be plenty of competition for those. But we've got to look at how we want to play the game. We've got a lot of really good, strong players in our 11, but we've also got potentially a couple of areas we need to tweak. So we need to make the assessment of whether the players we had, we're able to make them tweak and fit those roles, or whether we need to look elsewhere, and that's, I guess, what the auction does.
Well, initially I felt concerned that probably we're releasing too many, okay? Because we also know that we are going to be heading for a big auction in the next year, and we will have to release many in the following year anyway. But I think Mike and Simon had done their homework, and while we had a difference of opinion for a couple of people, for the bulk of the people we were releasing, I think there was complete clarity. But I think the spirit in our camp is the following, that everyone who has a view should be able to articulate their view, right? And then we should either, decide convince one way or be convinced. But we walk out of that with 100% alignment on whatever decision we took. So finally, I would like to say that while I started with butterflies in my stomach, I had complete clarity in the end.
Yeah, well, Harshal Patel, obviously quite a different Indian bowler than the ones we currently have. He's more probably through the middle and at the end. We know he can bowl the new ball, but he's got a different skill set. He also bats, and he's exceptional in the field. So he gives us that all-round Indian option, whereas the likes of Navdeep Saini, Siraj, they're different. So all three of those guys give us different options in terms of how we potentially want to use them. Some are at the top of the new ball, some are through the middle, some are more back end. So it's really important that within our Indian bowling lineup, we've got that flexibility. Daniel Sams, a left arm option, obviously a power play with the bat. So in terms of can offer us that, bowls lots of cutters, but can also bowl 140 if required. So he's a different type of player. We had Asudu Udana last year who did a nice job for us. Daniel Sams gives us more of an option in the power play and at the end, whereas Asudu was more through the middle and at the end, and Sams offers a little bit more with the bat. So just a different type of player we felt fits our mix a little bit better.
It's been practically difficult, let alone the cricket side of it. The way the world has been functioning has been very difficult and different this year. But having said that, I think BCCI did a commendable job by conducting the Syed Mushtaq Ali for a start, and our scouts, including me, we were on it. So we have a very precise and consolidated process we follow, to identify talent for RCB. So what we do ideally is send out. We try to identify our targets or identify the role we're looking for, and just go through the current squads of what players are and who they're playing for, and we try to allot our scouts accordingly. So we did have the Syed Mushtaq Ali, and we don't stop with only the domestic tournaments conducted by BCCI. We try to, even attend selection matches of state teams. We try doing that as a point of difference this year. So yeah, we're trying to grow as much as we can. So it's been good, and hopefully the few guys we've found this year come good for RCB if we get them in the auction.